Okay. Over to you, Hiba.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining with the great numbers. And I'm very much looking forward to giving this presentation today. First, let me give you a little bit of an introduction about me. My name is Heba Kholeif. As Luigi said, I'm based in Egypt, Alexandria, and I'm working with DCO, CBS, or Business Operations Strategy Team. I'm a person with visual impairment, and I have worked in the field of disability inclusion for more than 20 years now in organizations in and inside and outside Egypt, both national and international. I have a master's degree from the University of Birmingham, United Kingdom, in the field of inclusive education, and my passion is digital accessibility and accessibility in general. So this webinar today goes in line with the Global Awareness Accessibility Awareness Month, or GAAP, which is held every year during May. And during this month, agencies and organizations hold events to increase awareness about accessibility related issues. So we're holding this event as well as part of this awareness, Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So next slide, please. Here we have the agenda of the webinar. We're going to start with the introductions, setting the stage for talking about people with disabilities in general. And then we're going to have interactive dialogue, so please be prepared. We will open the floor for participants to unmute themselves and share with us their experience, or you can always write down your interactions in the chat. And this interactive discussion will be about what should we do before, during, or after organizing the inclusive career fairs. We will also discuss the challenges and opportunities that we might face, and we will have practical examples from the field, from people. We will open the floor. If you have, if you wish to organize a inclusive career fair, you can always ask your question. Or if you organized already a career fair, you can always tell us your experience. Then we will continue. So in the next slide, please. So this slide, we talk about disability. And according to the CRPD, persons with disabilities are people who have long-term mental, physical, sensory, or intellectual impairments, which in interaction with various barriers could hinder their full and effective participation on an equal basis with their communities. So why is this definition important? Because there's a differentiation between disability and impairment. The existence of an impairment does not mean automatically that this person has a disability. For instance, if I were to send you a text, which is in Arabic, for instance, and we do not have Arabic speakers around here, you wouldn't be able to understand the information that I'm presenting to you in the text. But if I have an additional thought of providing the translation of this text in English, you will be able to perceive the information. So in the first situation, because I created a barrier, I presented a language barrier, so you experienced a disabling situation. But when I removed the barrier, you don't experience this disabling situation anymore. So there are 1 billion people with disabilities worldwide, and 80 to 90% of this population are of working age and are facing higher rates of unemployment. Women with disabilities face even more higher rates of employment than men with disabilities. For example, it's very common for a person with a disability in low middle income country to do a lot of interviews, like 18, 20 interviews to secure a job. So you can imagine the difficulty or the challenges these persons are facing in order to find equitable and decent employment. Next slide, please. So, so why is it important to organize career fairs, inclusive career fairs? We have benefits for the organization and benefits and benefits for the person, or for the beneficiaries, or for the job candidates, and for the organization. First of all, the organization will have a untapped pool of talented individuals, resilient individuals, and determined individuals who are wishing to find a good employment opportunity. Uh, Persons with disabilities, when they find the office or the organization that would give them the space and give them an opportunity, an employment opportunity, they are very reluctant to leave this place. So organizations will experience a decreased turnover rates in their employees. Also, there are benefits for the persons with disabilities themselves, because of course, when they find decent employment, this will reflect positively on their standards of on their living conditions, on their participations and contributions within their communities. Also, being exposed to more than one agency, more than one recruiting entity, learning about conducting successful interviews, writing resumes, interviewing techniques, and also network with other stakeholders is very beneficial for a person who is a job-seeking candidate. Also, persons without disabilities benefit from organizing inclusive career fairs, because they will have the opportunity to mingle with persons with disabilities, learn more about persons with disabilities. The most challenging part of applying inclusion is that the exposure to persons with disabilities are not enough and not sufficient. If you could think back, when is the last time you saw a person with a disability walking randomly in the street, or in a shopping center, or in any setting? You would find that it's very rare to see a person with a disability in most of parts of the world, or some parts of the world. That's because persons with disabilities are still excluded, cannot still mingle and mix equally with the rest of the community. So when organizing inclusive career fair, this would give a chance for persons without disabilities to know more about disabilities, increase awareness. Next slide, please. So this goes nicely with the previous slide. It also discusses the importance of organizing inclusive career fairs. And the very important factor I would like to highlight here is the factor of cost efficiency. Because when agencies are publishing tenders and conducting job interviews and announcing some job posts and so on, this costs money. But if they have at one particular place and time all the agencies together and all the job candidates together, this of course will be more cost efficient. So that's why it is very important. All right, next slide, please. I'm a little bit, it's taking me a little bit of time to read the content in the slide because I'm not using my screen reader today. All right, there are 3 phases of organizing accessible and in-person career fairs. We have things to consider before the event and after the event and during the event, or rather during the event and after the event. So in the next slide, we are going to open the discussion for the participants to share with us what, in their opinion, is or should be done before the event.
How do you wish to do this, Heba? You want people to unmute themselves and just start saying things, or do you want them to put them in the chat?
Well, they can use either options. You can raise your virtual hand and we would unmute you, and then you would be able to contribute, or you can write down in the chat.
Okay. All right, I see a hand raised by Martin Lennox. Do you want to unmute yourself? Sorry, I need to unmute you, I think. Allow mic. There you go. Over to you, Martin.
Hi, Luigi. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I've just been to a place where, well, I've just had to consider my measures that I need to be taken into account before as a person in a wheelchair, traveling to an event. So one of the things to consider is those people will have to fly there. Most important is good accommodation, and then the travel from their accommodation to the fair on a daily basis, and just that their needs are taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Anyone else? Other considerations you can think of when organizing a fair? Do Sunday Majak. Oh, sorry, I need to unmute you. I'm very sorry. I'm not allowed. I'm sorry, not used to this thing. I think you can unmute yourself now. Do. Over to you, Do. Okay. Anyone else then?
Right. If there's no one, should we move to the next slide? And there will
Let
be
me
another. Sorry.
check. Let me check the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, Do, I unmuted you, but there was no go. All right. Abdullah Zara says they should select location that accommodate all types of disability. Also, materials should be readable by all type. Okay.
Yes. So should we go? Should we go to the next
Yes,
slide?
please.
All right.
Yeah.
So as our colleagues have mentioned, we have to consider a lot of accommodation issues either inside the building or outside the building. So first thing, we have to plan sufficient time in advance for the event, for the career fair, because there are a lot of things that we need to prepare for. Not only the accessibility of the event itself, of the event venue itself, but also, as our colleague said, we have to imagine ourselves in the place of a person with a disability trying to leave their home and trying to go to the event venue. So we have to think about what public transportations they will be using, providing, drawing a plan, an outline, a plan, like we have when we have to select, as we will see, when we will select the venue, we have to select a venue very close to the to the public to the public transportations to be easier to reach. Also, a key element in organizing any successful event or even any successful activity and inclusive activity is consultation with persons with disabilities and consultations with organizations of persons with disabilities. Involve them before even you start planning for the career fair, because more often we find that event organizers consult with persons with disabilities as an afterthought after they already established the event plan and they selected the venue and all that. But if you connect with them in advance, they will help you choose the accessible venue for different parts of disabilities. And it's very important to choose diverse organizations that have diverse persons with disabilities involved with them, because people with disabilities are very heterogeneous. They have diverse needs and requirements, and even if two people have the same impairment, they might have totally different requirements and needs. Also, we have to organizations of persons with disabilities will help us to connect to the sign language interpreters that we might secure for the event, will help us connect the braille printing facilities. All that will help, will be easier done with when connecting with OPDs. Approaching universities and other educational entities that have service provision facilities for persons with disabilities is the key in providing a pipeline and a databases of selected or potential job candidates. Because as we say in the United Nations Disability Inclusion Strategy, we have to develop a twin track approach, meaning that we have to include persons with disabilities into our mainstream activities, and also we have to apply targeted measures that is specifically targets persons with disabilities. We have to form an event planning and implementation task force and divide the implementation plan into measurable steps and assign each member a specific task. And be sure to make accessibility as a cross-cutting task in all these tasks, and also have an accessibility focal person, contact focal person that persons with disabilities can contact in case of any issues regarding accessibility or reasonable accommodations. Next slide, please. Now this slide, it discusses reasonable accommodations and accessibility that we have to consider when organizing our inclusive career fair. As we said, we have to have this accessibility focal person, and we have to address all accessibility of everyone or the different disabilities. We have to identify the reasonable accommodations that we are going to acquire, such as the language, sign language interpreters and braille printing facilities. And not only that, sometimes we might need to add additional lighting to the building. Sometimes the corridors are not very well lit, so we might need to add additional lightings. Sometimes we need to add visual warning signs or systems, such as color contrasted strips that are attached to the start of every stair or step to alert persons that there's a stair coming, the start and end of the staircases and the start and end of every step. Also, we have to announce the event in both electronic and traditional media and or forms of communication. And this is very important, especially if you are based in countries where internet and digital infrastructure is not the best. So you have to make sure to announce for your fair in radio and TV, and to make sure to reach persons with disabilities. If your premises is located within sometimes rural areas, you might need to ensure that persons with disabilities can still go to your event. So as I said, we have to follow a twin track approach in our planning and also in our outreach strategy. So we have to target mainstream media, like the social media and our website and all that. And also we have to target specific social media platforms that are made by persons with disabilities for persons with disabilities. In Facebook, for instance, there are a lot of groups and pages organized by persons with disabilities. So it would be helpful to share or to announce for the career fair there. Also, there are a number of platforms that are specifically designed by persons with disabilities. Like, for example, an informal platform called Clubhouse. It's a social media audio platform. This might not be used as a formal way of communicating the career fair, but can be used to set up a pre-career fair webinar and just talk to the people informally, listen to their questions, answer their or respond to their inquiries. Next slide, please. So now we are also still discussing the communication and the reasonable accommodation that we have to secure before the event. And as I want to highlight the idea of that, when you are trying to secure sign language interpreters, be sure to secure more than one sign language interpreter, because a sign language interpreter cannot translate for more than 3 hours maximum. So if your career fair is going to last for 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, be sure to secure more than one sign language interpreter. Also, if you will have more than or a large number of persons with hearing impairments participating, be sure to secure more than one sign language interpreter per hour, because they can be located in different parts of the room so that it would be easier to see them. Also, holding preparatory discussions and meetings with persons with disabilities and OPDs, I cannot stress that enough, and involve them in the planning and design phases of your event. Yeah, we discussed this before. All right. Be sure to contact the reasonable accommodation arrangements in advance, because the sign language interpreters are very busy. They can have a very busy schedule because they are not much. So be sure to approach them sufficient time in advance. Also, if you want to print Braille agendas or Braille materials of your Braille copies of your materials, sometimes the Braille printing facilities might be scarce. So be sure to connect with them in advance, and also be sure to especially when you are selecting a time to organize your career fair, if this time is close to the university or school exams, end of year exams or mid of year exams, these organizations will be really busy, or these facilities will be really busy. Also share the announcement of your career fair with the OPDs. They can publish it on their social media. And you can hold on a test run to check for any accessibility last-minute issues before the event starts. Next slide, please. You can also, now we move to how to select the appropriate location for the event. As we said, we have to ensure that the location is accessible not only from the inside, but also from the outside. There are public transportations leading to this venue. And also consider the surrounding area around the venue. If the venue is located in a public, very busy street with a lot of shops and shopping malls and shopping centers, it might be a little bit difficult for persons with disabilities to reach it. You have to test this using or not using, consulting with persons with disabilities to guide you when you're selecting your venue. Also consider selecting a venue which has accessible parking, because if the venue is located, as I said, in a very busy street, and a person with the disability is coming either by a car or using public transportation or using private transportation, there might not be a drop-off area directly facing the main entrance, which will make it very difficult for persons with disability to reach your place. Make sure that the main entrance, outdoor, indoor environment are all accessible for attendees with disabilities. And not only when we are thinking of accessibility, automatically our mind goes to, if I have to find a ramp, I have to make sure that the toilet is accessible. I have to to make sure that the elevator is accessible. This is all very good and very important. But also make sure to assess the room itself, or the meeting rooms that the event will take place. Do they have a podium with a step? This might not be accessible to speakers with the physical or mobility impairments. Do the chairs have steps? Is there a ramp? Is there a sufficient space between the aisles of chairs? You have to consider all this. Also, you have to consider the lighting and the acoustics of the environment, because this is very important, as we will discuss later on. Having accessible signage is very important. Having visual and tactile warning system directing attendees to the meeting hall or to the place where the event takes place or the fair takes place is very important. Sometimes it would be helpful to install tactile alarm system, warning system, to help persons with visual impairment reach your meeting place or your hall that the fair takes place. For example, some people can install a long carpet starting from the main entrance, leading to the meeting room. This might not be available in the physical accessibility standards, but we can do this as an extra measure to make sure that people can reach the the inclusive fair easily. Ensure the places are very well lit and have good acoustics, as we say. Why good acoustics? Because if the room is very wide and with a very high ceiling, it can be very echoey. And this could present a problem for users, for individuals with hearing impairments, who experience tinnitus, the constant noise in their ears. So this constant noise that they experience, accompanied with the echo of the speakers, the noise of the audience, is really very hard to it would be very hard for them to concentrate. Also, you can be mindful of the visual and the physical clutter and the spatial clutter within that are in the background of the meeting place, because this might be very distracting, either to persons with who are neurodiverse or to persons with visual impairments. Some people with visual limitations will prefer to have a plain background and a color contrast between the background and the speaker, so that they would be easier to see. Ensure that all the booths and the different meeting rooms have sign language interpreters. Make sure to select appropriate places for the sign language interpreters and simultaneous translation to sit. And so for sign language interpreters, they should not be sitting backlighted, or the light should not come from their back. The light should come in front of them, because this will create shadows. This will not enable users with or individuals with hearing impairments to see clearly the gestures. So be sure to provide seating position for them in where the light source coming in front of them. Next slide, please. Also, make sure that the job application is accessible and all the materials of the career fair is accessible. Make sure also they are published on accessible platforms. It's not, and make sure to test those platforms by persons with diverse disabilities. As we said, when we talk about digital accessibility, our mind goes immediately to persons who are using screen readers. Yes, they require a lot of, or not a lot of, but some accommodations, but also persons with intellectual impairments might require some accommodations. Some people with learning disabilities and dyslexia might require some accessibility measures as well. So make sure to test these websites by diverse persons with disabilities. Make sure your presentations are accessible. They don't have a lot of visuals without any verbal descriptions accompanying that. And be sure, if you are going to produce to broadcast videos, that either they have a voiceover or audio description, so that persons with visual impairment will understand the information you're presenting. You can provide accessible electronic copies for the job application and presentations in advance. This is very useful, not only for participants with visual impairments, but also for participants who are neurodiverse. They would get acquainted with the questions that you're asking in the job application, and they will get acquainted with the event schedule and agenda and the agencies that will be participating in the fair, so that they will be more focused and they will determine what activities they are interested in participating in. Next slide, please. Organizing a pre-career fair webinar. This is very important for persons with disabilities, because this will be a chance for career fair organizers to explain more about who are the recruiting agencies that will be participating. They can inform about any documents that the participants should bring along during the career fairs. They can provide or explain instructions, directions to reach to the event venue. They can explain the event schedule or the dress code. And giving directions to the event venue is very important, especially for users with visual impairment. You might need to explain even the type of public transportation that is used. Is it better to go by the subway or by bus? And if I go by bus, which bus number should I take? These things are very important, and for that you have to make the journey to the fair, explore the different public transportations available, and be sure to explain this to the participants beforehand. Next slide, please. Holding a pre-career fair visit is also very important. This will help you to assess your place before the event, do any last-minute changes in the location, make sure that everything is working. You can select representatives from persons with disabilities with their diverse needs to recommend or to give you all the last-minute changes and recommendations. Make sure that the sign language interpreters and live captioning can be seen from all angles, for example, inside the meeting room. And also, if your event is hybrid or your career fair is hybrid, make sure to have this test run also for online participants to make sure they can see the sign language interpreters and the live captioners. And here I'd like to mention an important point. Some people or most of us depend on automatic live captioning software to provide live captions. This is very good for a one-to-one everyday or everyday meetings that do not have any confidential informations. But since we are talking about job applications and writing sessions about recruiting agencies and job competencies that they ask for, and people would want to communicate effectively and meaningfully, it's good to provide the professional third-party captioners during these events. We have to alert the speakers during we will discuss this during the event. So let's now move to the next slide and have another interactive discussion. What considerations you think you have to take care of during the event, while the event is taking place, in order to ensure your career fair is inclusive? You can either write down in the chat, or you can raise your hand and consider that consider any unexpected challenges. Try to think out of the box, think from a persons with disabilities perspective. Or if we have persons with disabilities here, like our colleague has previously contributed, it would be very good for them to relate for us their experience.
Yeah, you can raise your hand and then I can allow your mic to be unmuted, but the unmuting is something you need to do yourself. Just FYI. So if you want to talk, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, put your comments in the chat, please. Antonella Barcelona says, guarantee that accessibility measures, physical and digital, are in place. Gimbani says language. This can even be sign language. Anyone else?
Anyone else?
No, I don't see any other comments.
All right. Thank you very much for our colleagues who raised a very important point. I think there is a message, but I'm unable to read it.
It says, have available support person to assist, by Alina Anikina. Yes, sorry if I mangle your names.
This is okay. This is very important, actually. This is a very important point. If you have persons with visual impairment joining your career fair, and they are joining, they are unfamiliar with the layout of the place, always have volunteers. We will speak about this actually. All right. So we'll go to the next slide. I'm sorry that I can see that there are incoming messages, but I'm unable to read them.
Zara says, whether and people attending the event not educated or do not know how to deal with people with disability. Our friend Usman Zahur in Pakistan says, material that is readable and user-friendly.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Luigi. All right. So we will address point by point. First, there's an important point that was mentioned, which is the idea of language. Always make sure you're using easy read language, or even produce an easy read version of your announcements. Because when we are talking about persons with disabilities, we often persons with intellectual and learning disabilities are overlooked. They are one of among the most unrepresented groups when it comes to persons with disabilities. So we can have some jobs that can be actually very suitable for persons with cognitive and intellectual disabilities, and they just might need a little bit of accommodation, like easy read versions of the documents. Also, recruiting volunteers. Are we in the, sorry, Luigi, are we in the next slide that has the recruiting volunteers in there?
Yeah,
all right,
during the event. Yeah.
Yes. So recruiting volunteers to assess persons with visual impairments in particular, and persons with disabilities in general, is very important. Make sure to train those volunteers before the career fair on how to communicate appropriately and respectfully and dignifyingly with persons with disabilities. Because sometimes people want to help, they are very keen on helping, but they do it the wrong way. So be sure to train them and orient them. Be sure to teach them how to use sighted guide techniques, which we have discussed in previous webinars, because this is very important. And also these volunteers will not only help as sighted guides, but they can help to direct other persons with disabilities to the event place. Or if you are holding your career fair as like in multiple booths in a very open area, in an open area, I mean, volunteers can direct persons with disabilities from one place to another. All right, so these are some of the measures we have to do. Consider having extra braille copies of agendas and training materials and applications in case you have extra participants who are braille readers. Next slide, please. Also during the event, sometimes the device I'm using is not reading. Also during the event, you have to consider if you are having food or beverages, ensure that persons with disabilities can access this food. If you are holding it in a cafeteria, make sure that the cafeteria is accessible, has an accessible seating for wheelchair users, have the items visually contrasted to their background so that they would be easier to see. You make sure that you have a sufficient wide place between the aisles of the table, between the tables, so that persons with disabilities who are wheelchair users can maneuver and move easily. Make sure if you are holding your offering food in a buffet style, make sure to provide assistance for persons with visual impairments, because this is a little bit challenging for them. So all these things you have to consider. All right, next slide, please. During the event, also we have to consider not using flashy lights or moving objects, because this can trigger seizure reactions with persons who are neurodiverse. So make sure to investigate all the lightings and make sure that the presentations presented by the different job recruiting agencies does not have any flashy items in them. Alert speakers and presenters to describe in words the information presented visually, and use the same tone when talking to persons with disabilities, and speak to them directly, not to their companion. This is very important for persons with intellectual disabilities. Sometimes people would speak to them as if they are children. So this is a little bit offensive. And also provide information on the location of the emergency exits, restrooms, and information desks for all attendees at the start of each session. And make sure you have volunteers that can assist persons with visual impairments if they need to leave the meeting room and go to one of these places. Make sure to position the sign language interpreters and captioners at the front of the building, the front of the room, but make sure that there are no window behind them. You can reserve nearby seating for persons with hearing impairments and persons with physical impairments. Some people might request this service to have their seat in the front of the room. And if unsure, you have to ask the interpreter where is the best position for them that would be seen by persons with hearing impairment. They would be your best option to have this information. Make sure the interpreter or captioner devices are seen, screens are easily seen, are easily visible in online and in the physical premises. So make sure the online audience also can exercise the same reasonable accommodations and use the same reasonable accommodations as the persons who are attending physically. Make sure that displays and tables or exhibits are not blocking paths of travel for persons with visual impairment. And the path of travel need to be between 3 to 5 feet wide. And also make sure that you can use adaptable tables if the attendees or the persons participating will need that. Make sure the tables are adaptable. Next slide, please. These are some of the items that we also have to consider during the event. First, before continuing, do any of you have any question? Or is there any comments in the chat, Luigi, you would like to share with us?
Yeah, so Usman was the last one to comment about readable and user-friendly materials. He's also saying identification of the types of disabilities, physical, visual, hearing, to sort of anticipate what kind of disabilities you're dealing or going to be dealing with, and then make separate arrangements for these audiences. The challenge is how you can guide and direct the different type of disabilities when you don't have language experts. Then Nahashon says O and M could be critical for persons with visual impairment during the event.
Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
Shall we ask the audience to raise their hand if they have questions or other comments?
Yes, please, of course.
Please raise your hand if you want to say anything. Again, I can only allow your mic, but you have to unmute yourself once you are allowed. Okay? Going once, going twice, and back to you, Heba.
All right. So there are a number of very good points that were discussed. First of all, we cannot really ask a person about their disability or their impairment. We have to, when we are planning for our event, we have to consider that all the disabilities are going to be joining. It has to be like a default setting that we have to apply for all our events and career fairs. So, and it's not very difficult. So, for instance, if we have an accessible venue with accessible parking, accessible entrance, accessible restrooms, we accommodate it for persons with physical disabilities. If we have this venue with signage in visually contrasted colors relative to their background, and we have tactile braille signs attached to the doors of the rooms. For instance, we have tactile surface difference to show participants with visual impairments to direct them from the room from the main entrance to the meeting rooms. We will be accommodating for persons with visual impairments. If we have sign language interpretation in place, we selected good seating positions for them. We assessed the lighting of the room, and we make sure to secure sufficient number of sign language interpreters Then we secured everything for persons with hearing impairments. So we have to set a goal in our minds that we are going to have every person of every disability coming to our career fair, because this is the whole idea of having an inclusive career fair, is that it should be inclusive of everyone. So you don't really need to know what type of impairments that will be coming. However, the thing you can ask about in the registration application of the career fair is what type of reasonable accommodation you require. So that will help you to recruit sign language interpreter, because maybe a person would require a different set of reasonable accommodation. So this is the only thing you can ask about in the application. Also, securing volunteers and persons to help you, especially when it comes to sign language interpreters. As I said, try to engage with persons with disabilities and OPDs as early as possible. They are the ones who are going to help you secure these volunteers. If you are in connection with OPD for persons with hearing impairments, they would have volunteers all over the place who can speak and interact or communicate using sign language. So be sure to engage with them as early as possible, because they are going to help you with that. Also, orientation and mobility, or O&M, which is the science that would enable persons with visual impairment to use their white cane and move and orient themselves to the surrounding environment, is very good. So as I said, when you organize this career fair visit, be sure to include a person with visual impairment who is a white cane user, so that they can guide you if you need to do any other changes. So another thing you have to be mindful of during your event is to specify a mechanism by which participants can ask questions or raise inquiries, either by raising their hands, or either by raising their virtual hands, or either by providing pen and paper on each table, because you might have a person who have a speech impairment. They might not be able to use spoken language to communicate. Sorry, I have a technical issue here. All right. If we can go to the next slide. If I don't mention something which is written in the slide, I apologize, because as I said, I'm not using a screen reader. I'm using a Braille device, and sometimes the Braille device do not display all the information in the slide. All right. Persons with disabilities may have involuntary body movement or facial movements. So be sure to look elsewhere, or try to communicate directly and effectively, and avoid remarking on these differences, because this might be a little bit offensive. Communicate with attendees by both chat and audio, and allow attendees to do the same thing in order to accommodate for people using more than one communication modality. If important information appears in the chat box, please be sure to read it out loud to the group, so that they don't miss out on any informations. And speakers or presenters should have their cameras on. Today I'm not having my camera on, unfortunately. They should directly face the camera and make sure their mouth is visible, and in order to engage with participants, especially participants who are lip readers, and also to allow attendees, as I said, with certain hearing impairments or cognitive impairments, to better communicate and engage with them. Ensure to have good lighting, so that your face is clearly visible as a presenter without any shadows. So be sure to sit in front of the light source, not at the back of the. The light source is coming from your front, not the back. Make sure that your virtual background contrasts with your face, and also your physical background contrasts with your face, so that you can be visible to persons with some visual disabilities and visual limitations. Some people are colorblind. They might have difficulty seeing the different shades of blue or the color combination of gray and purple, gray and blue. So make sure to search the internet for color combinations that are colorblind friendly, so that they would be easy. Materials and information you're presenting would be easier to see. Next slide, please. This is very important. The next point, make sure to provide a quiet or a sit aside area for people to take a break if need be. People who are neurodiverse might be very overstimulated and may find it draining to their nerves if they are interacting with a lot of people and they have visual and auditory stimulations all around them. So they might need just to take a break. So you have to keep these areas as far as possible from your auditorium or from your meeting place, because sometimes when you have a larger space or this quiet area has to be a little bit large, because if the career fair is held in a room with high ceiling, this can carry more noise. So be sure to locate this quiet area a little bit far from the main room, and also large enough to absorb the sound. Provide plenty of signage information at the beginning of each session, as I said, about the location of these areas. Not only the location of the restroom, but the location of these areas, and about the emergency exits for people with disabilities. Make all your signs are accessible either by tactile or by visual. When you are presenting or when you are standing in a booth of this career fair, be sure to introduce yourself to anyone if asked, even if you're wearing a name tag, because persons with visual impairment will not be able to see that. You can offer assistance with signing up for lists or leaving contact information rather than just providing pen and paper, because you might find persons with physical limitations that are not able to use the pen and paper, or you can find persons with visual impairments who are not able to use pen and paper as well. And please note that some disabilities are not apparent. They might be invisible. So be sure to inquire if a person has any difficulty filling in the application or providing the contact information even if their disability is not apparent. Next slide, please. If you're presenting in the career fair, or you can alert the presenters, you can use these as guidelines that you can distribute to the presenters, that to always speak in the microphone and to connect this microphone to the streaming device for online or hybrid attendees to be able to hear you, and assign someone to bring and pass the microphone to attendees when attendees are invited to speak or to ask questions. This will help both the live captioners and sign language interpreters to translate the information to persons with disabilities. And remember to call on or speak with both hybrid and in-person attendees. Sometimes when we're holding online events, it's a little bit hard or more challenging, let's say not hard, but more challenging to engage the audience, when compared to the physical event. So now we move to the next slide, where we ask another interactive question about what should you do after the event is finished. Are there any measures that you can take that you can take after the event is or the career fair is finished? Would you like to participate using the chat, or if you would like to raise your hand, we can unmute you?
Yeah.
Guys, girls, non-binary pals, don't be shy. Any comments in the chat you can put or raise your hand? We can allow your mic to be unmuted. I see a hand raised. Hold on, Heba.
Right.
Abdullah Zara, let me try and allow your mic. Allow mic. Allow camera as well.
Hey everybody, thank you for
Yeah,
the
there you go.
presentation. Okay, can you hear me?
I will. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Well, after the event, I think we should do something which called recording the best practice and the bad practice or what happened wrong in order to avoid it for next time. Also, if there is any type of challenges that we face during the event, we should take care of it and we should address the people that we are not able to reach. Sometimes it's not about the disability people, it's about what we call it, how we reach them from our side. If people think that they are not disabled, but sometimes they are trying their best to communicate, but they communicate in wrong way. All this should be taken in consideration. And thank you, Hiba, for this presentation. And thank you for this presentation. It's adding lots of information and it's giving us to open our eyes to something we were not able to see from my side, because sometimes if you are not in the what you call it in the other shoes, you cannot feel them. But now, thank you very much for this. Over to you.
Heba, we also have another hand. Do you want to take the other hand as well, or do you want to respond to Zara right away?
No, could we take the other hand as well, and then?
Okay. Okay, Juliette Muzondo, I'm going to allow the mic and allow camera. Over to you, Juliette.
Thank you so much, and greetings from Mozambique.
Hi.
In response to that question, it may entail us to review our own recruitment processes. And when we're sending out job applications, using multiple channels to send out instead of just sending, maybe we're doing online email, we may need to use other channels. And also, as we're preparing for this fair, we interacted with organizations of persons with disabilities. It may also be important to share the adverts with all organizations of persons with disabilities for them to disseminate to their members. And that way it provides an opportunity to have information reach to people with disabilities. In addition to that, we also, in our adverts, we're saying reasonable accommodations that may be needed. Persons with disabilities are encouraged to apply as a way of encouraging people and opening our doors to persons with disabilities. I think those are some of the quick things that we can do to facilitate that persons with disabilities apply. Thank you, and over.
Obrigado. Heba, that was our last hand.
All right, thank you very much, colleagues, for all the valuable comments. I will try my best to address everything, and let's hope I don't forget anything. So, Eva, if you can go to the next slide, please. So, yes, assessing our event for accessibility and for the event in general is very important. So, having an inclusive M&E process is very important. So, we can always ask participants what did they think about the event's accessibility? Was it accessible or not? We can also do a follow-up communication with the participants. We can let them know about the timeline in which we are going to respond to their job applications and submitted resumes or cover letters. We should provide this information for them. We also should record all the sessions of the event, distribute all the materials that we shared, that we presented in the event or in the career fair. We can distribute them to the participants later on. we have to make sure that if the event is recorded, we have to make sure to send this recording to the participants after the event finished. And having information about persons with disabilities contact information will help us create a database of qualified candidates from persons with disabilities, which will help us later on when we are recruiting to find qualified, talented individuals with disabilities. Next slide, please. So this slide presents other things that you might want to consider when organizing the career fair. As we said, for instance, recording all the event or the career fair activities. You can prepare some video briefs about the different jobs during the sessions that were discussed in the sessions. You can record also video testimonials from participants, encouraging other people to apply and to participate in the career fair. And keeping communication channels open between seekers and recruiters via social media is very important. So some of the participants also discussed some points. I was going to say something, but I completely forgot it. All right, so that's all from my side now. In the next slide, if you have any question, please feel free to write them in the chat. Or if you commented a comment and I forgot to address it, please feel free to alert me to that, because I'm so sorry. And in the next slide, I'd like you to think what is the immediate action you want to do, either when organizing a career fairs or in your recruitment processes in order to ensure that your recruitment process is inclusive, and what are your main takeaways from this webinar today?
Okay, we have a whole bunch of comments. Hold on, let me see where I can pick this up. One could be critical. Teresa Makaha is asking whether we have a template available for registration form of career fairs. That's question number one. Usman is saying ensure that people with disability friendly job application portals are developed. Ask for feedbacks about career fairs and request to provide areas of improvement for future job fairs. Those who participated, we can do a mapping of PWDs and share job info with them on a frequent basis so that PWDs can get timely information and apply for jobs. Then Kechi from UNOPS is saying we can keep the engagement ongoing after the fair by regularly sharing vacancies with them and offering our support with application processes. Nahashon is saying perhaps one key element to incorporate is the aspect of encouraging people with disabilities to apply for available opportunities, as often are times they tend to feel not as qualified. Also use all available platforms for job advertisements which are accessible. I also see a hand raised. Back to Juliette in Mozambique.
Thank you so much. I would want to answer the last questions on the conclusion, or what I will do and how I'll apply that. I think my entry point will be to engage with our HR department and hopefully organize a job fair, because this is a gap that we also have persons with disabilities within the organization. So as a practical activity that I can do. Thank you so much.
We have another hand from Usman. I was wondering, Usman, when we get to see your hand, I'm allowing your mic and camera, should you be so inclined. Over to you, Usman.
Thank you very much, Liuji, and thank you so much for this excellent information. Just to share with you, we recently had our HR working group meeting, and we have kept this mapping of persons with disabilities. Engaging with the persons with disabilities organization to encourage them to apply for UN jobs. For this, we are planning to organize a job fair, and that's the presentation which is at the right time, and we are getting information what are the areas that we need to work on, and how we can improve our job fairs in terms of attracting and engaging persons with disabilities. The other thing is we have a kind of dedicated job portal developed, established for all the UN agencies, funds, and program in Pakistan. So all the agencies' job applications are posted on that specific portal. We, as an HR working group under the OMT, we are trying to upgrade that job portal and making it more user friendly for persons with disabilities. So we are trying to add more things for the people, so that they can also listen what's on the website. We are also trying to add all the information, like you suggested, that we should use those colors which can be helpful for the visually impaired person. So what we would probably need support from the DCO side as well, because we have few UN volunteers who are with disabilities, and we have been offered a support from the UNV's teams. This that these UNVs can provide support to us, but we might also need a certain support from your side as well, so that we can, if we can get a list of kind of checklist, what should we include when we are developing a person with disability website for the job applications. What could be the possible options that we can add, and what are the areas that we need to consider while developing and upgrading our website. So this is my feedback updates from Pakistan office, and then also some support required from your end. Thank you.
Thanks. Heba, you want to respond?
Yes, please, before I forget. Okay, so yeah, in the BOS, we have developed some practice notes, especially in the three areas, or mainly in the three areas of disability inclusion: the inclusive HR, physical accessibility, and the ICT. And you can find in the ICT digital accessibility practice note, you can find some information about how to make your websites accessible. Be sure to test these websites by different people with different disabilities. Make sure the consultant rosters or the portals you're using are accessible. Maybe it's not sufficient to just mention that persons with disabilities are encouraged to apply, but also you can add that reasonable accommodations can be provided during the interviewing and recruitment processes, because some people feel a little bit concerned when they are applying for a job that the interview process might not be accessible. And thank you very much for sharing with us your experience, and good luck with organizing the career fair. And of course, we can support you in any way we can. I cannot, unfortunately, type in my email in the chat because I'm not using my screen reader. But of course, you can reach out to me if you need more support.
Okay. Heba, there were two more comments in the chat. One colleague is asking how to access the recording of the last webinar. Are we also posting on Yammer maybe? Because not everyone will have MS Teams.
Yes.
So
yeah, we will share if you register to the last webinar. If you registered, we will share with you a YouTube link with the video. It's just taking us a little bit of time. We have some technical issues that is delaying the process a bit.
Okay, good to know. YouTube is accessible to all, I should say. The main takeaway that Catchy had is to put in more effort with outreach. She's asking whether we have PWD platforms that can be shared with colleagues to support interactions directly with these communities. And there's also one more from Martin Lennox. Thank you, all your hard work considering us. This is all about building confidence to interact in a meaningful way. Appreciate your endeavor to be accommodating me. Your efforts are appreciated. Okay, word of thanks. Thank you. Heba?
Yeah, thank you very much. We do not have specific, social media platforms for persons with disabilities, but you can always do an internet search if you search on Facebook for persons with disabilities, or if you search through LinkedIn, you will find a lot of information out there. And just if I may add a small comment, as a UN official disability inclusive language, we are not advised to use the acronym PWD, because this objectifies persons with disabilities. So it's better to use the full sentence persons with disabilities, but we only use it with when we say OPDs, it's fine, but we are not advised to use PWDs.
Okay. I see Antonella has her hand raised. Antonella, I've allowed your mic and camera. If you want to unmute and turn your camera on, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone.
Ciao.
Greetings from Italy. Ciao. And thank you very much, Luigi and Heba, for all this useful information. I'm part of the DIS resource group on disability and inclusion, and I would just make a general observation, consideration on what everything that has been said and all the useful information. Of course, when all measures are in place, accessibility, physical and digital accessibility, that means that there are no barriers and that persons with disabilities can interact just as the others, because persons with disabilities do not want to be treated differently, but they just want to have access to and enjoy whatever an event, the office, or as the others. This is just to underline also the approach, because it is important that everything is in place, information is there, and that persons with disabilities can move around forms or places just as the others. Don't think that that you have to sort of be there all the time or take someone under the arm, because that would be sort of that can be considered as being treated differently. So I just wanted to sort of underline this this aspect, and thank you very much for everything. Over.
Thank you very much. This is a very important point that you mentioned, and to go in line with what you have just said, correctly put it. Thank you so much. That when we are asking for volunteers, or when we are suggesting to recruit volunteers, they are just for direction issues. If someone asks them for directions, then they can give them directions. But the key thing is to ask is if the person with a disability asked for directions, they would be able to provide it. But they have to, as you put it, they have to feel free to move around and use the facility the same as everyone else. Thank you very much for mentioning that.
Great. Let's check the chat. Zora says, I'm registered, but I changed the date from Friday to Wednesday. I hope you can include my name. Yeah, that's a technical thing. I think if you're registered, Zara, that sort of automatically be corrected. Heba, I don't see any new comments or feedback other than thank yous.
All right, Luigi, thank you very much. I just was wondering if you could share with them the feedback form. I don't know if you happen to have it. The link of the feedback form or the QR code. There's a QR code. Sorry?
Is it in the presentation, perhaps?
It's in the last slide. I mean the last slide, I guess. Is it?
No. There's a conclusion with 2 bullet points.
No, the one after the conclusion.
After the conclusion, additional videos and resources, upcoming webinars. Sorry, I don't see any.
The last one.
Any
feedback.
Feedback. I'm sorry. Taking it back after the events, other things to consider, Q&A. Raise your hand, use Q&A or chat box and share feedback. Okay. Conclusion, 2 bullet points. A hidden slide that says additional videos and resources and upcoming webinars. No QR code, no link, nothing.
Oh, okay. I have the link, but unfortunately I wasn't able to share it because the screen reader issue. But I can send it to you on the email after the webinar, so that if you can provide.
Can you put it in the chat of this webinar? Is that possible?
Unfortunately not.
Okay. All right. All right. We'll do our best. You would like to conclude this webinar, Heba?
Yes, thank you. I like to thank you, Luigi, for all your support and for moderating and supporting this webinar. And I'd like to thank the participants for joining and for all their comments. And we hope to see you in future webinars.
Yes, same here. Thank you, Heba. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.